Hey everyone, and welcome to this deep dive. Today, we're tackling something that I know a lot of you are really interested in: ADHD in the classroom.
Yeah, it's a big one. And we're really going to unlock some practical strategies, ones that can really make a difference.
Yeah, you know me, I'm all about practical, and that's why I'm so glad we're diving into this classroom interventions for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder considerations packet.
It's a mouthful,
It is a mouthful.
but it's packed with good stuff. Really evidence-based strategies for teachers, for parents, anybody really who's working with kids who have ADHD.
And even if you're not, it's still fascinating stuff.
Oh, totally.
But okay, before we get too far, let's make sure we're all on the same page about what ADHD actually is.
Yeah, for sure.
So our guide here actually pulled straight from the DSM-V, which is like the big book of all things mental health.
The official source.
Exactly. And according to the DSM-V, ADHD is a persistent pattern of inattention and errable hyperactivity impulsivity. And here's the key. It's got to be interfering with how a young person functions or develops.
Yeah, it's about the impact. Like, it's not just about the behaviors in a vacuum.
Right.
It's about how those behaviors affect a student's ability to learn,
Yeah.
their ability to make friends, to function in the world.
Right. It's not just like, oh, you're a little bit fidgety or, oh, you forgot your homework once or twice. This is a pattern, and it's getting in the way. And speaking of patterns, the guide also breaks down ADHD into 3 different presentations, or you could even say types.
Yeah, we've got predominantly inattentive, predominantly hyperactive impulsive, and then the combined type. And that's important because it's not one size fits all, right?
Exactly.
Like each of these presentations comes with its own set of challenges, its own set of strengths, and it really needs its own tailored approach.
So it's not like you can just say, oh, here are the ADHD strategies. It's like, well, which type of ADHD are we talking about?
Exactly.
Because the support's going to look different. And you know what I love about this guide is it gives some really vivid example of what these presentations can actually look like in a classroom setting.
It makes it so real.
Yeah. So imagine for a second, you're a student, right? And you've just been given a list of instructions, multi-step instructions.
Right.
You're trying to follow along. But somewhere between step 1 and step 2, poof, gone. You've lost the plot completely.
And we've all been there, right? Like, where did my brain just go?
Exactly. But for a student with ADHD, this is happening all the time.
And it can be so frustrating for the student, for the teacher, for everyone involved.
And the thing is, it's not just about not listening, right?
No, not at all. Often what we're seeing is a challenge with working memory, that ability to hold on to information while you're trying to use it.
Which, let's be honest, is a pretty essential skill for, learning.
Absolutely. Like, imagine trying to build a house without being able to remember what materials you need or what order the steps go in. It's just not going to happen.
It's like trying to juggle while riding a unicycle. Your brain's working overtime just to keep up.
Exactly. And that's why understanding these underlying cognitive difficulties is so crucial. It's not about labeling. It's about knowing what kind of support will actually make a difference.
Absolutely. So let's talk about what that support looks like in action. Our guide dives into some really practical academic interventions, and I have to admit, I was taking notes like crazy. So many good strategies. I feel like we could do a whole nother deep dive just on those.
Oh, absolutely. Which ones are you already thinking about putting into practice?
Well, one that really stood out to me was this idea of deconstructing tasks.
Oh, yes. Breaking it down.
Especially for written work, like that feeling when you're facing a blank page, a huge essay looming over you.
Oh, the worst. It's completely paralyzing.
Exactly. And it's not just writers, right? Anybody who struggles with organization or executive function, that feeling of overwhelm can be a huge roadblock.
Huge. And it's so common in students with ADHD.
Totally. And that's where this deconstructing thing comes in. So instead of, say, assigning a 5-paragraph essay all at once, bam, you break it down.
Right, manageable chunk.
Exactly. Like maybe today you're just focused on brainstorming ideas.
Love it.
Tomorrow you work on crafting a single paragraph.
And then the next day, another paragraph. It's like building a Lego structure, brick by brick.
I love that analogy. And the guide even suggests limiting the work per page.
Oh, that's a good one. Visually, that can make a huge difference.
Right. Instead of this sea of blank space, it's like, okay, I can fill this one page. I can do this.
It just feels more achievable, less daunting.
Totally. And then they talk about using tools like speech-to-text software.
Which can be game changers for some students, especially those who have those fine motor challenges, The physical act of writing can be a real struggle.
Yeah, and then you're adding that on top of all the other challenges of ADHD. It's like, no wonder they're not getting their thoughts down on paper.
Exactly. But with speech to text, it's like, okay, let's remove that obstacle and see what you're capable of.
It's about leveling the playing field a little bit.
Exactly. And on that note, organization, another big one.
Oh my gosh, yes. Where do we even start with that? I'm pretty sure my locker in middle school was a safety hazard.
Right. But seriously, for students with ADHD, organization can be a daily struggle.
Mm.
And it's not just about being neat. It's about having systems in place that actually work for their brains.
So what can teachers do? I feel like this is a big one that they're always asking about.
It is. And luckily, this guide has some really practical tips, like color-coded folders for different subjects,
Mm-hmm.
right? Visual cues are so powerful.
Oh, yeah, I'm a visual person for sure. Like if it's not color-coded, I don't even know what's happening.
Right. And then designating homework partners, that's another good one. So there's that built-in accountability.
Oh, that's smart.
Because we all know how easy it is for things to get lost in the shuffle.
Oh, tell me about it, especially when you're dealing with like executive function challenges on top of that.
Exactly. And then another thing the guide mentions is having regular clean-out days, like once a week. Take 5 minutes to just purge the backpack, organize the folders, get rid of anything that's not essential.
Oh, I love that. Out with the old, in with the new. Or at least in with a little more order.
Exactly. And it's not just about the physical clutter either. It's about creating that sense of calm and order in their environment, which can then translate into a greater sense of calm and focus internally.
It's all connected, our inner world and our outer world.
Totally. And speaking of creating that supportive environment, the guide goes beyond just physical organization.
Oh, yeah, for sure. We're talking about the whole classroom vibe here.
Exactly. It's about fostering this sense of belonging, of understanding, this space where students with ADHD feel safe, supported to express their needs.
Like, it's okay to be who you are.
Absolutely. And the guide suggests some really creative, proactive techniques to make that happen. Like, remember those nonverbal supports we were talking about earlier?
Yeah, those were so clever.
Right. Something as simple as a pre-agreed signal between a teacher and a student.
Like a secret handshake.
Kind of. Like maybe a gentle tap on the desk if the student starts to get a little bit off track. It's just this discreet way of redirecting their attention without disrupting the flow of the lesson.
I love that. It's like this silent language of support.
Exactly. And then there's this idea of choice as a reward, which I think is so powerful, especially for students with ADHD.
Oh, tell me more about that one. That sounds interesting.
So instead of always being told what to do, right, which can feel really restrictive, they get to have some say in the matter.
Oh, I see.
Like maybe they get to choose where they sit during a lesson or what type of project they want to do. It's that little bit of autonomy.
That can make all the difference.
Huge difference. It's like, hey, I see you, I respect you, and I trust you to make some choices about your own learning.
It's so validating.
Exactly.
Mm.
And when students feel that sense of ownership, their motivation, their engagement, it just skyrockets.
It's like they're active participants, not just passengers along for the ride.
Exactly. And speaking of participation, let's not forget about the power of peers.
Oh, yes. Peer-mediated learning. Brilliant.
So powerful.
Mm-hmm.
The guide gave this example of transition buddies, which I thought was adorable.
Transition buddies. Tell me more.
So pairing students up, right, to help each other navigate those sometimes tricky transitions between activities.
Oh, that makes sense. Transitions can be tough for anyone, but especially for kids with attention challenges.
Exactly. Like suddenly the room's buzzing, everyone's moving around, and it's like sensory overload.
And then you add in the whole executive function piece of like, okay, now I have to switch gears and focus on this new thing. And it's like,
Brain meltdown.
exactly. But having that buddy there, it's like this built-in support system.
Right. It's like having a co-pilot to help navigate those potentially turbulent times.
I love that. It's all about anticipating those potential pitfalls and putting proactive measures in place.
Totally. It's like we're setting them up for success, not setting traps for them to fall into.
Exactly. And that actually reminds me of another thing the guide talks about, that homeschool connection.
Oh, so important. Can't have a successful classroom without it.
Right. It's like, what good are all these amazing strategies if they're not being reinforced at home, too?
Exactly. It's about creating that consistency, that sense of teamwork. And the guide actually has some really concrete tips for communication. Like, remember those daily notes we were talking about?
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Those seemed really helpful for parents.
Totally. But instead of just a vague, oh, how was their day
Hmm.
kind of thing, they suggest something more structured, like a simple checklist.
Oh, I like that. Checklists are my love language.
Right. So maybe there's a box for, like, did they complete their homework? Did they stay on task during independent work time?
And then maybe a little space for like any specific observations or challenges from that day.
Exactly. And even a quick note about which positive reinforcement strategies worked well, because that can be so helpful for parents to know.
Oh, for sure. Like, okay, today they responded really well to earning extra computer time or whatever it might be.
Exactly. That way, everyone's on the same page. Teachers, parents, even the student themselves.
It's like this beautiful triangle of support.
I love that. A triangle of support. And when that's in place, it's amazing what these kids can accomplish.
It really is. As we've been talking about all these strategies, I keep thinking a lot of this stuff isn't just good for students with ADHD.
Right. It's just good teaching.
Exactly. Like a supportive classroom environment, clear communication, opportunities for choice and collaboration. Who wouldn't thrive in that kind of setting?
It's true. And I think that's such an important takeaway. When we're talking about supporting students with ADHD, we're not talking about creating something separate or extra. It's about creating a learning environment that works for everyone.
It's like we're not just accommodating differences, we're celebrating them.
Absolutely. And recognizing that those differences are what make our classrooms and our world so much richer.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Well, to all of you amazing educators, parents, humans out there who are dedicated to supporting students with ADHD, thank you. You're making a world of difference.
Yes, thank you.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.
Subscribe now.